Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll just be a few minutes whilst we're waiting for everyone to log on and then we'll get started. Oh, we've got an influx of attendees, that's exciting. Okay, wonderful. The numbers going up. Lovely. We're still getting people logging in. Okay, we've held on that number, so I will just get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah, and I'm an Events Assistant Apprentice on the Unlocking the Severn project. Thank you all so much for logging in and attending the talk. This event is brought to you by the Unlocking the Severn project, which is a conservation and river engagement project for people and wildlife. The project's being delivered by Canal River Trust, Severn Rivers Trust, the Environment Agency and Natural England, and it's all made possible through funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund and EU Life programme. And we are joined on screen by Laura, a British Sign Language interpreter who will be present throughout. Please be mindful that there is a live this is a live recording with live interpretation and not a translation. And this talk is also the first talk in our Severn series schedule of talks, which I will tell you a little bit more about later. So for our housekeeping, I will quickly run through a few things and then we can get started. At any time during the webinar, you will have the opportunity to submit any questions that you may have. To do so, just type your question in the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of the control panel. And the questions will then be answered at the end of the presentation. You're welcome to use the chat box throughout. It is located on the bar at the bottom of your screen, and I would recommend typing in hello or, saying where you're tuning in from in the chat to practice using it if you would like to. Please do be aware that this webinar will be recorded and then it will hopefully be accessible on the Unlocking the Severn YouTube channel. So you can tune back in, or if you would like to let anyone know about it, then you can point them in that direction. Once Steph, who will be doing the talk, begins screen sharing, you should be able to see the presentation on one side of the screen and Steph and Laura on the right-hand side of the screen. If this isn't the case for you and you would like to make use of Laura's interpretation, then please follow these instructions and I will copy and paste them into the chat for you to follow as well. So once Steph begins screen sharing, click on the View Options button in the top center of your screen, and then click on the side-by-side mode option in the drop-down menu. You will then see a little tick next to it, and that will tell you that it's been clicked. And I will pop those in for your reference. So I will now pass over to Steph, our Unlocking the Severn Events Officer.
Thanks, Hannah. I'll just start sharing my screen with you. Oh, and there we go. So hello everybody. As Hannah said, my name is Steph and I'm the Events Officer for the Unlocking the Severn project. It's so great to have so many of you here this evening joining our talk. So I could see from some of the information you submitted beforehand that many of you know a little bit or maybe know a lot about the project already, but that most of you don't know much about the project or have never heard of us before, which is brilliant. So I hope this evening I'll be able to give you an overview of the Unlocking the Severn project, let you know what we're doing on the River Severn and why we're doing it, and also share with you how you can get involved with the project as well. So before I launch in and tell you about the project, I'd like to set the scene for our story. So our story is set on the River Severn, which at 220 miles long is the UK's longest river. It starts up in Plinlimmon in the Welsh Hills, winds its way down through various towns and cities such as Shrewsbury, Ironbridge, Worcester and Gloucester before making its way out to the Bristol Channel. And the river has been really important since medieval times as an artery for trade and the movement of goods, and it has historically supported a large fishing industry as well. So it's a really important river for the local people. However, it's also a very important river for fish, and particularly migratory fish. And by migratory fish, we mean fish that travel to different habitats at different parts of their life cycle. There are lots of fish that use the river. You can find out more about those in the second talk in this series if you are interested. But for today, the star of our show is the shad, which might be a species that many of you have never heard of before, which is absolutely fine. The shad is a member of the herring family, and there are actually two different species of shad that use the River Severn. So there is the Thwaite shad and the Alice shad. Shads live out at sea for most of their lives. However, they migrate into fresh water each year to spawn, so to produce and deposit their eggs, but they only spend about 1 month of the year in fresh water, so they're predominantly a sea fish. And they're also known as the May fish because this is the main month for their migration. So this map here shows the River Severn, this longer river here in the lighter blue, and the River Team, which is an important tributary of the Severn, this dark blue river here. And the red markers that you can see, the red triangle on the Severn and the red circle on the River Team, show the historic range of the Thwaite shad on both rivers. So shad used to swim up to Welshpool on the English-Welsh border on the River Severn and could reach Ashford on the River Team. So as you can see, they travelled huge different distances on both these rivers, and the reason they did this was to reach their preferred spawning grounds, which are gravel beds that are about 1 to 1.5 metres deep, and these are the conditions that shad are naturally adapted to spawn in. Historical records show us that the shad played a very important part in the river. The fish were present in very high abundance and so created a productive fishing industry that provided employment and trade opportunities. They were a valued food source as well, not only for the local people for whom they were a brilliant source of protein after the long winter months in May when they arrived for their migration, but also the Alice shad, which is the larger and less bony of the two species, was prized by wealthy and the royalty. So there are records of Severn shad being sent to Henry III to see the monarchy through Lent. And also other royalty recognised the importance of the shad and introduced laws to protect them. So Queen Elizabeth, for example, ordered the destruction of fishing weirs below Gloucester because it was recognised that they were having an impact on shad populations in the Severn. So historically, they were a very important part of our river. However, sadly for the shad, things started to go downhill during the Industrial Revolution. During this time, the river began to play an even more important part in trade and the movement of goods, as more and heavier goods needed to be moved around and moved inland. So, for example, coal and iron were taken downstream from Ironbridge, and luxury goods needed to move upstream and inland. However, the river was known for being very difficult to navigate. So water was very high in the winter when it flooded and very low in the summer. And this impacted the trade industry. And so people started to look for ways to improve river transport. To manage water levels and make the River Severn more navigable all year round, a series of locks and weirs were installed between Gloucester and Stourport. This was very good news for trade and transport. However, not such good news for our migratory fish and our shad. So as you can see from this picture here, which is of Digless Weir, just south of Worcester, these weirs effectively create walls in the river. They are tall and steep, the water flowing over them is very shallow and fast flowing, and this creates a very big problem for fish. This quote here is from a government inspector's report of fisheries, and as you can see, it says the finest river in England is nearly ruined by building walls across it, sufficient to stop everything except a large and powerful animal. Many of you may have seen photos of shad leaping over weirs. You might have been lucky enough to see them yourself in person. Did I say shad? I meant salmon. Salmon are an example of those very large and powerful animals that can jump over a weir if they need to. But unfortunately for the shad, they are unable to leap. So they are unable to pass these weirs and therefore cannot reach those historic spawning grounds further upstream. So after the construction of these weirs, shad fisheries collapsed on the Severn and they were quickly forgotten about. And this is another quote from a government fisheries report that states, "Shad promise soon to be extinct in the river." So very sad times for our shad. Did this mean an end to the shad in the Severn? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that there are still shad in the River Severn today. They have managed to survive. However, their numbers are currently massively below historic levels, and their range is still severely restricted due to the weirs. So going back to this map that I showed you earlier, with the red triangle and red circle showing you the historic range of the Thwaite shad, the blue triangles on the Severn and the blue circles on the River Team show you the location of the weirs on these rivers. This first triangle that you can see just north of Gloucester is Upper Lode Weir in Tewkesbury. This would be the last location that shad could get to on the Severn. However, Upper Lode Weir has been modified. A notch has been cut out of it that allows the shad to pass. So you can see in this photo here, the water and the weir on the far side, that white water, the very, very fast flowing water coming down the weir. But nearer to us here, you can see that notch that's been cut out of the weir, the sort of slower flowing water that the shad are able to swim up and pass over that weir. So they are able to pass through Tewkesbury. However, they are only able to reach currently just south of Worcester. And you can see that there are still large areas of the river that they are still unable to reach. So what does the future look like for our Severn shad? Well, this is where the Unlocking the Severn project comes in. Unlocking the Severn is a conservation and river engagement project for people and wildlife. And we consider it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to restore connectivity on the UK's longest river. And our aim is to unlock 158 miles of river for rare and endangered fish. This will not only benefit the shad, but will benefit other species as well, such as salmon, lamprey and eel. As Hannah mentioned, this is a partnership project being delivered by Canal River Trust, Severn Rivers Trust, the Environment Agency and Natural England. And it's all made possible thanks to our fantastic funders, who are the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the European Life Programme. So how are we doing this? How are we unlocking river for fish? Well, we are using a few different measures to allow fish to overcome these barriers in the river. On the River Team, we have undertaken, these have been completed, 2 partial weir removals at Knightsford and Powick Weir. And then on the River Severn, we are building 4 fish passes at Digless Weir, Beverly Weir, Holt Weir and Lincoln Weir. So what is a fish pass? Well, a fish pass is a structure that allows fish to move around a barrier or an obstacle, in this case our weirs. And we're using 2 different types of fish pass on the project on the River Severn. we're building 3 of these deep vertical slot fish passes that you can see an example of on the left, and we have built 1 naturalized bypass channel. I'll go into a bit more detail about how both work in a minute, but they both work in essentially the same way. They slow the flow of the water down, and they break that 2-metre depth change between the top of the weir and the bottom of the weir into smaller, less steep and more manageable steps. The best way to think of them is like a huge fish staircase. So when I first started on the project and someone was explaining them to me, they used the analogy, they said if you were in your kitchen on the ground floor of your house and wanted to get up to your bedroom on the 1st floor, you wouldn't try and jump between the floors, you would take a staircase. So these are essentially huge fish staircases that allow them to bypass the weir. So this is Digless fish pass. It's the largest one that we are building, and it's just south of Worcester city centre. And this is one of our deep vertical slot fish passes. To give you a sense of scale, you can just about make some people out in the kind of far view of that photo on the left. But Digless is almost 100 metres long and is about 5 metres deep. So it's about the length of a football pitch, and I am told that you could fit 36 double-decker buses inside if you wanted to. So it is a huge structure. You can see that the fish pass is split into a series of pools, and each pool is about 20 centimetres higher than the pool before it. So in the second photo on the right hand side, the river is flowing down from right to left. So fish approaching this pass will be coming upstream from the left of the photo. On the photo on the left, you can see some channels down either side of the fish pass. These channels take some of the river water down and create turbulent water at the bottom of the fish pass that entices the fish to the bottom and leads them to the entrance. Once the fish are inside, they can make their way through the pools, through these slots that you can see in the photo on the left. The fish can pass from one pool to the next, having a break in the pools as they go. And then from the second photo, you can see the entrance at the top of the pass, so the fish can exit back into the river and have effectively bypassed the weir. So here is the second kind of fish pass that we have built, and this is Beverly Weir, which is next up on the river from Digless. And this fish pass was completed in September 2020, so it now has water running through it. And we were able to use a different design here at Beverly because there was a bit more land. There was just simply more space to build the fish pass. So as with the deep vertical slot pass, this naturalized bypass channel has a gentle gradient from the top to the bottom. And the boulders that you can see in the channel help to slow the flow of the water down and make it more natural, allowing the fish to travel through easily. So if you're a fish approaching the weir, you would see very fast flowing turbulent water coming down the weir, and to your right you would see slower flowing, more natural water, and that is the route that you would choose to take. You may notice that some of the boulders are different sizes. So we've got smaller boulders on the left hand side and larger ones on the right. That is because the water flowing down the outside of the fish path will be flowing in faster, and so those larger boulders are needed to slow it down. So hopefully that has given you a quick overview of how these fish passes work. There's a lot of maths and engineering knowledge involved in designing and building a fish pass. If you would like to know more about the ins and outs of a fish pass and the technicalities, you can join us for the third talk in our Severn series, where we'll be joined by one of our project engineers who will be able to answer questions about those and tell you a bit more about their construction. And I'll also be joined by Rich, one of our project managers this evening, who will help me answer any tricky questions as well. So alongside these fish passes, we are undertaking some research on the shad to understand a bit more about their lives in the River Severn and beyond. And it's really important as a conservation project we learn more about their movements in the river and also their population numbers as well. And we're doing this in a variety of ways. So we have done some radio tagging, which is when the fish are fitted with tiny radio tags, which can track their movement not only in the river, but also out at sea, because this is a really poorly documented part of their life cycle. So it's been giving us a real insight into where the shad are going and spending their time out at sea. We've been doing some eDNA sampling as well, which is when we take a sample of river water and analyse the DNA within it to see what species have been present. And we also have been doing monitoring to look at fish population numbers. We've got resistivity counters in the water that can keep an eye on numbers passing through the notch in the weir. And we've also got a brilliant team of citizen scientists who sit at the riverside in Tewkesbury each May and record the number of shad that they can see passing over the notch. So in the right-hand photo here, you can see that notch at Tewkesbury and a lovely shoal of shad swimming upstream. So these are just some of the ways that we're researching into the shad in order to help their conservation efforts. Now, as I mentioned, this is a project not only for wildlife, not only for fish, but we're also unlocking the Severn for people as well with our community engagement programme. Being outside and being near water especially is so good for our physical and our mental well-being. There are lots of amazing new experiences that can be had down by the river, chances to learn new skills, and so much heritage and nature connected to our beautiful River Severn as well. So we're really, really excited to have a really varied programme to be able to share this with lots of different people. And I'm sure you can imagine this has all been impacted heavily by the events of the last year, but we're still finding ways to adapt and do things in new ways so that we can still connect people with the river. So this photo shows Digless, just south of Worcester. You can see the weir and our construction site. And this in the centre of the photo is Digless Lock Island. And this is a real hub for our project and is very special for us because it feels like a secret island in the river just south of the city. So at Digless Island, we are restoring the Lock Island and also restoring the Victorian lock gate making workshop so that we can invite school visits and host events and open days to share the history of the island and the weirs and the story of the shad. And we have a wonderful team of volunteers who are helping us to manage the wild areas on the island as well. Also at Digless, at the Fish Pass, we have built England's first underwater viewing gallery. So this is a large window which is at the top of the Fish Pass. It's reached by descending several flights of stairs that take you under the surface of the Severn. And this will be used primarily for scientists to monitor fish migrating through the Fish Pass at different times of the year, but will also be used by school groups on their visits to Digless, and it will be open for bookable visits as well, allowing people to gain a really unique and special view of the River Severn. So this photo you can see on the left shows the windows being installed, and then the photo on the right, you may have guessed, was not taken on the River Severn. That's actually a photo of a similar viewing gallery in a fish pass in Portugal, hence the lovely blue clear water. But those are actually shad swimming past the window. So it gives you an idea of what we might see at Digless, and we're really excited that that will be opening later this year. As well as all of this, we have a fantastic education programme. As I've mentioned, we're working with local schools to run visits down to the river and to Digless Island and Fish Pass. We've been getting students involved with the shad monitoring at Weirs in Tewkesbury, We'll be getting students down to Digless Island where they can have sessions in the workshop and the viewing gallery to learn more about the Weirs and the Shad. And for anybody who's a bit further away or looking for some homeschooling inspiration at the moment, over on our website, we have a series of free education packs that you can download that cover a variety of topics such as the water cycle, the Shad, and river habitats and pollution as well. So please do check them out if you are looking for some homeschooling or teaching resources. We are running a volunteering programme as well. So as I mentioned, we have our volunteer citizen scientists who count Shad each year at Tewkesbury. We have volunteers working on Digless Island as well. And then we also have volunteers who help us to monitor salmon in the autumn. We have a task force who help with habitat restoration up and down the river. And our volunteers will also be a key part of our visitor experience at Digless Island, running tours of the workshop and of the viewing gallery as well. We have a travelling exhibition as well, which tells the story of the Shad and the river. Obviously, you're not able to go and see it at the moment, but it will be touring around Worcestershire, Gloucestershire and Shropshire. So please do keep an eye on our website and social media for updates on when that will be open again, and do go down and see it if you are able to. We have a whole programme of events and workshops as well. So many online events now at the moment, but we have plans to run more events in person as we're allowed to get people down to the river. And we've run lots of different workshops as part of the project. We've had people looking at documents in archives about the River Severn. We've had photography and mindfulness workshops as well, that all kind of aim to get people exploring the river and looking at it and appreciating it in different ways. And then finally, just to add, just to end on a bit of a fun note, we've created a river-themed play trail at Severn Valley Country Park, which takes visitors on a journey down to the river. There are lots of these different pieces of play equipment that showcase different parts of the heritage and the wildlife of the river. So do go and take a look at that if you're nearby or passing in the future, and enjoy a fun day out by the river. So as you can see, it's a huge, huge project, lots going on. We're very excited to be able to deliver all of this and to be able to share it with so many people. And there are lots of ways that you can get involved with what we're doing as well. So the easiest way for you to keep in touch and find out what's going on is to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram with the handle @SevernUnlocked, and we're regularly posting updates about what we're doing on there. You can also head to our website, which is unlockingthesevern.co.uk, and sign up for our monthly newsletter, where you'll receive updates about the construction of the fish passes, information about when they're opening, and information about all our volunteering and events opportunities as well. We would love for you to get involved by helping us to count fish, which you can do online. So if you head to our website, you'll be able to see the section about joining our online citizen science programme. We know it's a really challenging time at the moment, and that many of us aren't able to get down to the river as much as we would like to. But this is a great way that you can stay connected to the river and the wildlife from the comfort of your own home. So on the website, you can watch a series of videos that were filmed at that notch in Tewkesbury Weir. And you can count the number of shad and other species that you see passing by. And that data is really helpful because it feeds into the other data that we're collecting with our riverside citizen scientists, and it helps us to estimate the shad population numbers. So please do go and check that out if you'd like to. It's really fun, might be a good homeschooling activity as well. And it's quite a mindful activity to just sit and watch the water flowing and the shad making their way upstream. And finally, if you do live locally and would like to volunteer for us in person when restrictions allow, or join us at future events, yeah, please just keep an eye on our social media and website. And there is a way on our website as well that you can register your interest in our volunteering opportunities as well. And finally, just to say, if you have enjoyed learning about the project and you've kind of been inspired by the story of the Shad and what we're doing down on the river, please do share this story, share the story of the Shad with anybody you know who might be interested, to help us spread the word about this amazing little fish. So thank you so much for coming along tonight and listening and finding out about the project. And yeah, hopefully you might have some questions. I'm very happy to answer those.
Thank you so much, Steph, for sharing all of that with everyone. It's amazing to see so many participants that have stayed with us through the whole presentation. So now, as Steph mentioned, we'll move on to the question segment of this evening, and Steph and our Unlocking the Severn programme manager Rich will be answering any questions that have been submitted in the Q&A box. Feel free to carry on sending questions in if you think of something now that the talk has finished. So I will get started. Bear with me 2 seconds while I open this up. So I have the first question, which is, what factors prevented the total removal of weirs? So perhaps Rich, you are the best person for this question.
Yeah, on the River Severn, unfortunately, it's a pretty straightforward factor. The river's still used for navigation. So whilst not quite as busy as it originally was for the transportation of goods up and down the river, it's still widely used for leisure purposes, principally nowadays as a small bit of freight movement. So because of that, we had to build a fish pass rather than take the weir out. It's the preferable option, probably the most cost-effective option, is to fully remove a weir if we can. It's better. But in this case, it wasn't possible. On the River Team, where it's not navigable, we were able to partially remove the weir at Powick, and the other weir we placed a rock ramp in. So it's just a matter of placing a bed of rock on a gradient to bypass what was an old gauging weir. So that was much more straightforward because we didn't have any navigation matters. But it explains why we have to do what we're doing on the Severn.
Wonderful, thanks for that answer, Rich. And we have a question here asking, are we doing any tours of the weirs, or I'm assuming as well that is in relation to the fish passes on site?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll chip in, Seth, as you will. But yeah, we had actually planned quite a few separate open day type events during the works. We wanted to encourage people to come in and see it and walk through the fish passes that was being built. It's quite a unique feature, obviously, that it's one of its own, really. So, but unfortunately, just with the circumstances of the pandemic and arranging it and keeping it safe and all those kind of things, it's a narrow structure inside. So keeping people separate was going to be really challenging. So unfortunately, while we've tried to arrange them in the past, it's not been feasible during the works. But obviously, we'll have the gallery open as soon as we physically can, once the fish have started to migrate, and that'll have to make up for that. And we can do tours from the top, and the plan is to have a small path running alongside the fish pass, and we'll be able to do some more of those kind of activities. But unfortunately, up till now, it's not been possible, unfortunately.
Thanks for that, Rich. We have a question from Tom, who's saying, has a webcam been considered for remote viewing?
Yeah, yes, there is a camera going into the fish pass, so that'll be used for monitoring purposes. So it will stay there all the time. We'll be able to use that. The plan is also to use some of the footage from that over to the community and kind of education workspace on the island, so we can share that information and data, and we'll use it for obviously promote information on the website as we've got now for fish counting. So we'll do something similar for the gallery. So there'll be a fixed camera in there at all times.
Yeah, so that will be a really nice way for us to kind of share the fish passing through the fish paths with people who aren't able to visit or a bit further away. So yeah, really excited that we'll be able to share that.
Wonderful. I've got a question from Caroline. She's asked, can you expand a bit more on what Tewkesbury can do? Now, I'm not quite sure if that's what people from Tewkesbury can do specifically, but that might be the direction the question was going in. Yeah,
so for anybody who's interested in volunteering with us in person at Tewkesbury to do the shad counting by the river, we'll normally do recruitment for that in the spring. So again, keep an eye out on social media and on our website and newsletter for information about how you can join in. We've got a volunteering officer on the project who provides training to show you kind of the tricks for watching out for the shad passing by and go through all the kind of monitoring procedures for recording data for the shad passing by. So yeah, best to keep an eye out on all of our channels really for any information on when you can get involved with that.
Wonderful, thanks for that, Steph. We've got an interesting question here asking how we will measure success.
For the fish passes.
I'm going on the assumption that this is success of the fish passes for either the shad populations or in general for the fish on the river.
Yeah, I can field that one. I think there's lots of different measurements for the project in terms of whether it's been a success. There's quite stretching targets for engagement, in terms of public engagement, volunteering, education, involvement of people. So there's really stretching goals that the funders have set for us. So there's actual physical, tangible outcomes that we need to reach from that perspective to measure success. From a fish pass perspective, we'll continue doing our tagging of fish throughout the rest of the project and beyond, so we can ensure that fish have definitely passed upstream and through all of our fish passes. One of the key targets is to establish a certain amount of spawning sites upstream of Lincoln, which is the furthest we're further on. We're not expecting populations to recover, dramatically very quickly. It might take a few generations before we get huge numbers back again. But it's more around the monitoring of spawning sites. I think the intention initially was to have around 5 spawning sites established within the first 5 years, so we'll just continue to monitor those. And the good thing is the habitats is in as good a condition now as it was when the weirs were put in, so we're very confident that the fish will re-establish themselves very quickly upstream.
Thanks for that, Rich. And we've got a question asking about how long it'll take to complete the project, so our timeline.
For the construction of the fish passes, so as Steph said, the second fish pass at Beverly was completed in September. The one at Digless is currently about 2 meters underwater, but we're scheduled to be finished there by the end of February. Our last site is at Lincoln. We're looking at being finished there in April, and then the third one, which is Weir, which is our most challenging one, we're aiming to be finished there by October of this year. So the first 2, Digless and Beverly, will be passable for this year, for this year's migration run. So the tagged fish at Tewkesbury should be able to get past Digless and Beverly and up to Holt, and then next year we'll be able to test all 4. So that's the timing for that. And then for the wider project, in terms of our other objectives from a public engagement and all those other things that we're doing and monitoring, it'll run through till September of 2022.
Thanks for that, Rich. We've got a question asking, are we also undertaking any work to improve the gravel redds for fish to spawn above the locks which we are unlocking?
As it stands at the moment, no, we're not. But we are happy, or the fishery specialists are happy with the condition of the river upstream, and the gravels. They're much better than the opportunities for fish to spawn in the current range between the estuary and Worcester. So we're really comfortable that if they're already finding areas in that shorter stretch that'll re-establish themselves very comfortably in the existing gravel beds that are upstream.
Wonderful, thanks Rich. And we have a question from Jamie asking if there were any plans to extend the project up the Severn as far as Shrewsbury to enable the Shad to potentially reach its original spawning grounds near Welshpool. Is this not possible due to the location of the weir in Shrewsbury, or is it already passable?
I'm not that familiar, if I'm honest, with Shrewsbury. I do understand there's a fish pass on the weir at Shrewsbury. How efficient and effective it is, I can't answer that. Unfortunately, I don't really know. But my understanding is that there is a fish pass at Shrewsbury, so there shouldn't be any means to stop them getting to that original range, Welshpool area. But I'd have to check with a colleague on that, I'm afraid.
And then we have, whilst spending the money installing the fish passes, have we added hydroelectric generation, producing renewable energy for climate change mitigation and raise some revenue? Sorry about all the big words.
Yeah, it's fine. We did look into the hydroelectric options. Location-wise, it wasn't ideal, and we didn't, from a feasibility point of view, because some of the other landowners adjacent to the fish passes have looked at it as well. But the assessments we've had done didn't seem to suggest it was particularly viable. So, from what I understand, that's why it's not been taken forward. Whether it may do in the future, landowners may look at it, but it wasn't something that we considered. We considered it, but didn't pursue it on that basis.
Okay, thanks for that, Rich. We have another question from Stephen. Sorry, we've got all the questions coming in. Will the viewing areas be protected from flooding? He says he imagines most of the area at Digless is underwater now the river is in flood.
Yeah, so the building's been designed to keep water out and to sustain high flow. So there's a flood door on the building, which it's already been tested twice since it's been put in, and it's held up fine. So we're confident, based on the conditions we've already had to experience since it went in only a few weeks ago, that it's fine. We're not going to experience issues with flooding inside the gallery. So there was some moisture build up in there just naturally, and there's a small pump inside there that can manage any water coming in, but the fact it's been so heavily tested already gives us confidence that we're not going to have to worry about that too much. And also the way that it's been constructed in terms of the concrete it's been built is kind of one continuous shaft rather than lots of connecting joints, again to increase its water tightness. So it should be effective.
Thanks for that, Rich. We have a question from Tony asking, is there potential for monitoring the impact on other migratory fish, such as salmon or trout, or how has that been taken into account? Yeah,
obviously we're targeting Shad as part of this project, but the intention is that the fish passes will be open to all migratory fish, and through the monitoring that we'll do, particularly with the viewing gallery window, it'll enable us to record with that camera that we talked about just a minute ago. It'll be able to record the various species that come through and the quantities as well. So it will enable us to see if we get increases in the numbers using the fish pass. And there's other means of the fisheries monitoring team will have other techniques. We've got different systems of recording fish movements, different acoustic and other detectors. So yeah, it will not. This is not just for Shad. We can detect other species too.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have Richard, who is asking, what effects to the upper river ecosystem can we expect with the return of the Shad? I appreciate that we're not migration experts here, and we will have a talk more specifically on migration ecology later in the series, but if anyone wants to provide a bit of an answer, that would be good.
I guess from a habitat, but Steph, do you chip in if you prefer? Obviously it's more species in the river, which is going to be a good thing for the life cycle of other species that will prey on Shad as well, but also other species.
Yeah, sorry, Rich.
Go on, Steph, go for it.
Yeah, no, just the shad and other species as they travel upriver bring this sort of injection of nutrients up with them, and as Rich said, it will benefit kind of species, predatory species, with them laying eggs and there being kind of more fish present. So hopefully it'll have benefits on the whole ecosystem, not just for the fish, but for the sort of mammals and other species as well.
Thank you both for that one. We have a question from Lynn saying, we mentioned lamprey coming back into the river, and she understands that they can damage fish stocks, and knows that in the USA they have had quite a lot of problems with them. Do we have any specific ideas behind that?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure, and I can't answer that. I've never heard that in relation to this project. Never heard of them being an issue. We're expecting them. We know they're in the river, and I've not been advised that there's any issues related to it. But no, I'm sure that'll be.
I've encountered either. But I would say probably the second talk in the series about fish of the Severn, they might be covering lamprey, and Pete and Ed are very knowledgeable, so they might be able to answer specific questions about lamprey.
Yeah, especially Ed, as he's with Severn Rivers Trust, he might be a bit more in the know about what sort of lamprey populations we have on the river and things like that. So that might be a good question to ask if you would like to attend the second talk. We have a question from Thomas. I'm going to try and whiz through as many of these as possible because we are running out of time. Do other species also gravitate towards the pass and benefit from it, or will others like salmon continue to try and leap the weir? We have already mentioned a little bit about how it will benefit a lot of species, but if either Steph or Rich have anything else to add, please do.
Yeah, I can say that one. Yeah, so I mean, we're fortunate that the way the weir is constructed is built at an angle, and the fish will naturally want to make their way to the most upstream point of the weir, which is exactly where the fish pass is being constructed. So fish will naturally want to go there, and we're expecting all types of different species to use the fish pass, including the salmon. They don't leap by choice; they leap because they have to. If they've got a smoother route, they haven't got a. It takes a lot of energy for them to try and leap and get over an obstruction. So if they've got a smoother route through the fish pass, which this will offer, they'll certainly prefer to use that if they can. So we're expecting all different types of species to be using the fish pass, including non-migratory fish. There'll be permanently fish in the fish pass, and we'll just go and live in there with no intention of going anywhere, just because it offers a bit of shelter and a bit of protection. So there'll always be something of interest in there. But we're principally focusing on migratory fish, and we're expecting all species to use it. It's been designed that way, that if shad can use it, then every other migratory fish will be able to use it too.
Thanks for that, Rich. We've got a question about where shad go in the winter, if anyone is prepared to answer that.
Yeah, technically they're a sea fish, so they only come up into the river to migrate. They're called the May fish, known as that, because they normally just come up in May. And the tagging work that we've done has shown that they normally only stick around somewhere between 15 and 40 days in the river, depending on how far they go and spawning, and whether they just come in once or go out and come back in. So they actually spend a very short amount of time in the river. The rest of the time they're at sea. And one of the first, it's the first for this project that we're learning more about what they do at sea. No one knows or had known before what they do, but through our tagging, we can also detect them when they're not in the river. So they've been detected around 20% of the tagged fish that we've had. They've been over to Swansea Bay for a bit of a holiday. So we've detected some off North Devon, Southern Ireland. So we know they travel quite far around on the coasts before they come back in. So like I say, that we know they're at sea, and we're learning more and more as we go. We've linked up with Swansea University, who've put some fish monitoring devices out in the estuary. So again, we can learn more about where they go in their patterns when they're not in river.
Wonderful, thanks Rich. We have a question about the method for tagging the shad. If we know the answer to that, then fantastic, but I appreciate that we're not the professionals on this subject.
Yeah, I mean, I can take this one. It's relatively straightforward from that perspective. So at Tewkesbury, they put they built a specialised fish trap. So it's just a cage almost effectively. So they trapped some of the shad into the cage at the top of Upper Weir. They take the fish out by net. They do a very small surgical incision and plant a really small little detector inside the fish. It looks like a tiny little test tube. Place that in and then sew them back up, and it's normally done all within about 30 seconds, and then they're placed back in the river. And we know from our monitoring that we've done, I think some of the fish that we've tagged have come back for the third year running. I think the second year we had around 65% of the fish that we tagged came back again for the year after. So we know that the mortality rates very low and probably very unlikely to be tagged related. That would be a kind of a more normal mortality rate anyway in terms of return based on the data we've got.
Lovely, thanks Rich. And we have another question here. Are there any plans for monitoring eels or lamprey as part of the project?
Yeah, similar to from before in terms of the camera and other monitoring we'll do in the gallery and the fish pass. For eels, the plan is to also have a separate eel pass, which will be constructed on the opposite bank from where the fish passes have been constructed. So they're likely to be installed either later this year or probably into next year. So it'll be their own pass for eels specifically. So we can do monitoring on those when they're in place. But we'll have the viewing windows to enable us to do the monitoring through Digless specifically.
Thanks for that one. We have a question here. What other wildlife benefits do you envisage in addition to the benefits to fish populations?
I think we covered that one earlier, didn't we? That it'll have kind of far-reaching benefits beyond just fish for mammals and birds and all sorts
of river
of
health in general.
Wildlife. Yeah, just the river health in general.
Lovely. And then we have, are we planning to work with local care homes? For example, remote viewing counting would be a great way to involve residents. I don't think we have anything specific, but it's definitely something that we can take note of and sort of think about for future, especially with the online counting and stuff like that. That would be really nice.
That's a nice idea. We have involved a few care homes with one of our art projects in the future, and we know that's a really nice way to get people connected. Yeah, again, who might not be able to visit the river very much. So yeah, working with lots of different people.
And then
the online citizen science will continue as well in terms of the on our website, the uploaded video clips of the fish passing up a load. We've been encouraging people to help us count quantities of fish, so that will continue as well. So there's remote opportunities to be involved, as well as physically getting to the weir and do some counting.
Yeah, definitely. And we have one final question. Will we be sharing data from tag monitoring beyond the River Severn in future talks? This is potentially something that will be covered quite significantly in one of the later talks, which is about the migration species and migration ecology, because we have two specialists coming in to talk about their research. So we will hopefully cover that more significantly in one of the later talks.
Yeah, hopefully our PhD student Pete, who's been dedicated to fish migration, specifically shad migration on the River Severn, so he knows all the details of where the shad go and where they don't go. So I'm sure it'll be great for a talk in a few weeks' time.
That's a nice segue into promoting the series, Hannah.
It is a nice segue. So thank you all so much for attending just on that, and thank you so much for sending in so many questions. It's lovely to get such a nice amount of feedback that you enjoyed the talk and that you've been interested in the subject area as well. I will briefly go over the further 6 talks in our 7 series if you are interested in tuning in to any of the future ones. So I will just briefly share my screen to show you. Our timetable. Okay, so obviously the first talk is this talk right now, and our next talk is on the 5th of February, Friday the 5th of February, which is all about discovering the fish of the Severn. And then we have the 18th of February, which is all about fish, what a fish pass is, in more depth than Steph covered it today, and what some significant challenges have been building them. We also cover, river flies and migration ecology, which is in the hidden journeys within our rivers. We also have very exciting panel on why we need healthy rivers on the 1st of April, which is going to be a slightly different format than standard delivered talk, but that one will be very exciting, and we'll be joined by a range of panelists. And then we will also talk about how citizen science is unlocking the River Severn and how we're using it on the project. So there's lots of really exciting different talks there, and I will just pop a link to our I have popped a link in the chat which has goes straight to our recent blog post about some more in-depth information on all of those talks. So feel free to check that out, and it links to every single Eventbrite page as well. So if you wanted to book onto all of them, you could do, and all of the links would be in one place for you. And then moving on from that, feel free, as Steph mentioned, to have a look at our website for more information on the project, and also to keep an eye on our social media accounts. We are at Severn Unlocked on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and I have popped that in the chat box as well. And I will just pop a link to the survey about the event. Feel free to click on the link and complete the survey now if you would like to, but we will also be sending it out in an email afterwards, so there isn't any pressure to complete it right now and use up your evening. We would be really grateful if you could take a couple of minutes to tell us about your experience. So I will just pop that in the chat now for you. Lovely. There we go. So feel free to click that link and it will take you straight to the SurveyMonkey survey. And we're receiving lots of nice comments from people saying thank you. I'm glad that you all enjoyed it. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And that you found it interesting. That's wonderful. I will just wait until the clock strikes 8 before I end the webinar, just to give you the opportunity to click on that link if you would like to. But also big thank you to Steph for doing the presentation for us, and for Rich joining us to help answer the questions, and also a big thank you to Laura for interpreting the talk for us. Wonderful. Okay, it's reached 8 o'clock and it's our time to log off, but hopefully we will see you again at some of the other talks on the Severn series. So wishing you all a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.